Hello, everyone. Mike Myers here from Lully. And Jeff, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. My name is Jeffrey Smallwood. I'm here with Waco Shoe Company. I've been their controller slash CFO for the last 5 years now, and kind of getting really involved with their warehousing space. So here we are.
Okay. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us today. It's been a while since we chatted in this type of capacity, so I really appreciate it. We're going to touch on a couple different topics today, and yeah, we'll see where it goes. So kick us off. It's been a little bit since you have actually deployed and implemented Lully, and wanted to hear, sometime later now, how has Lully impacted your guys' day-to-day business or operations or outcomes? What's it been like?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny that we're doing this on December 31st to bring in the new year. So that's great. I think we deployed officially back in February of 25. So it's been roughly 10 months with full deployment. We did some test deployment going back into 24, I think September. Since that full deployment in February, it's been a remarkable change in our warehouse, honestly. We had a lot of processes. One of our primary segments is QVC, drives specifically around their dropship model. We've got TSVs, which for those that don't know, that's today's special value. That's where we're going to push out anywhere from 40 to tomorrow's TSV is 100,000 units in a 48 hour time frame, which is substantial. The biggest noticeable difference that Lully has made is specifically around our multi-unit packages or orders. The matching that's brought to us has been huge. We already had a good single unit process for these huge shows, but layering into Lully, both inventory allocation and pick optimization for the routes has been massive.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it might be worth talking a little bit about how you approach singles processing, kind of what your setup is, because you have a really unique condition with the sales that you guys do.
Right. And I should probably go back and preface that. So under normal day operations, we actually use Lully for our full pick operation, specifically QVC, but we're also layering in our other shows like GMA and Amazon and everything else. The TSVs are a special case in which we actually bring in all that product. It's based around one specific show unit or SKU in which we'll have 24, 40 styles. And so we actually have those staged already in shipping. So there's not a sense to actually run the singles through there. But on a day-to-day basis, in which we're mixing everything, that's where it really shines. The TSVs are the edge case because our multi-unit packages are multiplied by 100% compared to what we'd get on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, during TSVs, that's edge case. Day-to-day everywhere else, we're really flying Lully full send.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting because, so many warehouses, they bring the inventory in, they put it away, you wait on an order to come in, and you pick it from where it is or you reprint it, whatever it is. But you guys are fundamentally different here for these shows specifically, where you know what's coming and you get to play this game of preparation, and it's kind of this all hands on deck exercise to get set up, get it ready. And then,
yeah, we've got a show on Friday. It kicks off tomorrow at midnight, and I mean, we're offloading a container for that product right now. I don't have time to go through and place 100,000 units in the racks. It's getting staged immediately.
Yeah.
I think it was a show back in August. We didn't even have the product at showtime.
Yeah.
It took halfway through the show, we got a container. We didn't even locate it or anything else. Just send it straight to the pack line and go. And scanning commenced, and it was gone. Epitome of an ideal cross dock. It was great. But it was a cross dock for direct to consumer. It was a fun test.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's also, not to toot Lully's horn here, but I will for just a moment. I think it's interesting that you guys had the foresight when going through the implementation to think about the controls you wanted, to be able to segment work, to put filters in place, but also that to add value, we don't have to take over everything. We can slice and dice and really fit in where we're best suited.
Right. And that in itself is probably why we're here today. The implementation was the ability to implement that in phases, not take over our whole entire system as opposed to what another WMS would want to do was crucial to everything here. I presented it, and of course they asked for the price, and it was like, oh, we can just turn it on off. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't take over our whole entire system. Yeah, sure. Go right now. I mean, it was easy. So that in itself, not being able to, or being able to focus on what our problem was at the time, implement, and then keep on deploying it was,
Yeah.
on your end.
So shift gears a little bit. One of the things that I pride myself on and we take a lot of pride in is the customer support component, just how we engage with customers, how we onboard customers, the experience that we give them. You and I have a relationship, and I don't want that to cloud the judgment here, but talk about what just support looks like, what the experience is, if you could isolate just the Lully component.
Isolating just the Lully component, I think you and Andres are super responsible on everything. And if we set my side, our relationship to the side entirely, the communication between Jose and you and Andres, for example, take myself completely out of it. Super responsive. Jose, as great as he is, for him to be able to execute any of the stuff that he's been able to do without your guys' help wouldn't be possible. So as far as implementation, everything else, your guys' responsiveness, it's been great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people put on the website. They put in the marketing material, 24/7 support, whatever it may be. And, we do a bit of that as well, but I actually intend to deliver on it.
Right. I mean, I know there's been times that I've reached out to you and had a call about a problem that we were having. Not that there's a lot of them, but specific questions. I know you've been on site and you're like, hey, let me get Andres. And Andres was on it immediately. So
yeah.
It's always been a quick turnaround.
I appreciate that. You kind of touched on it. You don't have a peak season the same way that a lot of warehouses, especially in the e-com space, experience peak, but you have these sales that kind of act like mini peaks throughout the year. And we already talked about, Lully is not processing everything for those sales, but could you give some, data points or talking points about how those sales go now versus how they went prior to Lully or even prior before you guys started this big improvement journey?
Yeah, I mean, we've made other changes throughout, but like you touched on, we don't have a specific peak season. We're dealing footwear. Of course, we pick up in Q4. Everybody's shopping. Everybody has a little bit more freedom to buy what they want, and they do. So, I mean, our D2C business picks up primarily around then. Our peak season tends to be in the springtime. We do a lot of flip flops and everything else. So, I mean, we still experience those. The big peaks, though, like you mentioned, is we spike up. We've got 9 TSV, maybe 8 TSVs next year. And I mean, every single month, at that point is basically a little mini peak during the year or during each month for a week-long period. Before we implemented any pick changes, our ability to pick the multi-unit order specifically would drag out for close to a week. We have 48 hours on most of these turnarounds. It's becoming standard. With the way our system prior to the pick optimization and everything that consumes with it, with the inventory allocation, it would take a week just to get that product to our pack line, just because we were going through 160,000 square foot facility and there was no routing. I could be going from bin A to bin Z. Okay, I need to go back to bin B and everything else, just because the multi-unit routing wasn't entirely there. Our system allowed for batch picking, it allowed zone picking and everything else, but I think the zone picking absolutely crushed. It wasn't even feasible since we do a cluster pick. The way our system was doing made it impossible to actually get all those orders out in time. Since going to you, I mean, we're still not the fastest at it, but we're getting it out in time. So it's cut tremendous amounts of time off for our pickers.
That's awesome. How is how does the team on the floor feel? Like, are they seeing the difference? Do they feel the difference? With
So
every team, there's good and bad, right?
there wasn't really any bad on the front end. There was some confusion on what we were doing. We had processes down, but at the end of the day, they didn't really know what the processes were because they were just looking on their scanner. Okay, I'm going here. I'm going here. So the initial confusion was, hey, we've always done a zone pick. I stay in my zone, right? And then as we've continued to evolve this, we realize, hey, that's not the best case scenario, thanks to what Lully does. So that's really all the confusion that came in, and that was the negative on it. Once they pieced together and saw the routes that they were going, it made sense to them. After that, 2 weeks ago, I'd actually had somebody in our order creation or pick creation team ask, hey, can we go and do this for this segment? And that's the GMA conversation that we're having. So I've got them actively asking, ready to pull the trigger on that. Beyond that, I did have, and I mentioned this to you as a highlight, I think this was a few months after we initially deployed. I'd gone around and asked, hey, everything's looking a lot better out here. What do you contributed to? And the first response is how they didn't know it was Lully, but it was, hey, how we're doing our picks is great. I think that's our biggest factor. And that's a new supervisor we had, and he was on the floor before he stepped up. So he's been on front ends of it, or both ends of it. So he's been good. So not a ton of negative on their end, other than the initial confusion during deployment. But
yeah, I mean, change is always hard. How change gets rolled out matters. But at the end of the day, I think if you are bringing the people along, you're making them feel like they're part of the process. That's half of it, right?
Right. And I mean, let's pinpoint on that change once again. I want to highlight one thing about it. So we utilize the Honeywell scanners. We have TaskLit and everything else. So during all this change, what we did is essentially the pickers didn't notice any difference. Their day-to-day, all their operations remained completely the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that was huge on their end. If we hadn't told them, or if they hadn't noticed their routes had changed, they would have been a seamless transition. They wouldn't have known a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then no confusion whatsoever. So just wanted to pinpoint that. That's where all the confusion was. Just, hey, I always stayed in this section. Now I'm going this section and this section. It's been great.
Yeah, and you guys leverage some mapping capabilities that I think are interesting, because you have what you refer to as the green room, where in effect, if you just blanket this entire warehouse on a map, the green room is equal opportunity to everything else. But after understanding your operation better, after understanding some of the pain points, we were able to add in some one ways and some biases to try and make managing the green room easier, we'll say. And I love that type of flexibility of just, okay, hey, let's just add a one way here, another one way over here. It doesn't exist in the real world, but we're going to bias the behavior to try and get to a more comfortable way of operating for the team.
Right.
Yeah. I love it. Well, sir, thank you again for taking the time to chat with us and hopping on and doing a testimonial here. It means a lot, as you can imagine. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for all the time this year and all the help. It's been a record year. Let's look forward to another one in 2026.